That's fine. Brilliant. Good morning, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. You are here for the online Climbing and Neurodiversity webinar. This is being hosted jointly between the Association of British Climbing Walls, the British Mountaineering Council, Mountaineering Ireland, Mountaineering Scotland, Mountain Training, and NICAS. All of the big dogs in one place, trying to work together and offer you the best information possible. I am Robert Mackenzie. I am from Mountaineering Scotland and I will be your host for today. I'll be lurking around in the background, just making sure everything's running fine. I will be handing over to our panelists very shortly, who are going to run through an awesome set of presentations for you. Some great information from some people that work and play in various parts of our industry. And then I will be back a little bit later on for the question and answer section. So today we are joined by 4 climbers, professionals from all walks of the climbing industry. We are going to be joined by Alex West, Chris Shephard, Alex Hithersay, and Juan Avendano. Alex West. Alex is the Diversity and Inclusion Manager at the BMC. He leads on the delivery of a range of EDI work within the BMC. Coming across from football, Alex is passionate about using sport as a tool for social mobility and increasing participation across all people and communities. So really knowledgeable, good guy to have involved in this. Chris Shephard, I got sent this description for Chris. I absolutely love it. Chris is a climber, a deviant, proudly autistic, and based in Sheffield. That says all you need to know. Legend. We're then going to have Alex Hithersay, Service Coordination Manager for Autistic Children and Carers Together. He is also Send Climbing Coach and Performance Climbing Coach. So lots of interesting experience there. Those are our speakers for the day, and during the question and answer section we will be joined by Juan Avendano. He is the dad of neurodiverse twins and has been diagnosed with ADHD himself. He is a NICAS trustee, BMC fundamentals provider, former GB climbing coach, and current coaching consultant for GB climbing. But in his main role, he is a primary care mental health team for the NHS. And here he provides psychoeducation, coaching, and practical support for people with ADHD, as well as more complex patients. So lots of great experience there, and will be vital to have for our question and answer section later. So welcome to all of our panelists. Thank you guys for joining us. During the question and answer section, we might be joined by Abby Blakely and Kath Hipwell. Abby works for NICAS and Kath for the Association of British Climbing Walls. So we've got some big voices in there as well. Lots of people to answer questions. Lots of people to answer questions in the question and answer section. Kath was shouting at me there because I've blocked her video. Sorry. Enough from me. I've done enough talking. I'm going to hand over to Alex. Please don't be shy with the questions. I'll be back a little bit later on for the question and answer section. Welcome to all of our panelists, but if everybody else could hide their videos and mute yourselves just now, we will kick off with Alex West.
Brilliant, thank you. Here we go, just going to make sure we can see this. Let's just have a quick look. So if I can get a quick shout out, sorry Robert, just make sure that that's been shared now.
All good.
Lovely. Okay, well, thank you so much, everybody, and good morning. A massive shout out to everybody who's joined as well this morning and giving up the time to run through some EDI and inclusion, education and training. It's always beneficial and it's always really well received, I've found, working in football and now going into the outdoor sector and a few other sports in between. So just a massive thank you to everybody giving up the time this morning on the call. So a quick background about me. I'm the Diversity and Inclusion Manager at the BMC. I started this role in December 22, so about 4 months into the role now. Previously worked in football. That was with the FA, both regionally and nationally in a variety of different roles. I'm a UEFA B qualified football coach. Hopefully going to move on to some kind of climbing coaching or something like that. UEFA B is a level 3 out of 5, so it's kind of where football coaching becomes a bit more professional. I have 2 cats, which I always put on these things because at no point do they give any warning when they're going to jump on screen. So if you do see a big cat jump up, don't worry, that's normal. I plan that into the presentation. And I'm a very beginner climber, so I started my climbing journey probably about 4 or 5 weeks ago, and I've been really enjoying it up to now. So that's a little bit of background about me. Going to give a little bit of background about the kind of topics that we're going to touch on today. So this is a big thing. So first off, this is a safe space. Those questions that Robert was mentioning earlier, please feel confident in asking those, knowing that you're not going to be humiliated if you get something wrong. You're not going to be embarrassed, and you're not necessarily going to be punished. That is with a caveat that the idea of a safe space isn't that you can then go and personally attack somebody on this panel or on this call. That's not what a safe space is. It's more about feeling confident, speaking up and asking questions to improve your understanding, okay? As an openly gay man working in sport for probably the last 8-9 years, it's my personal experience that people are actually quite keen to share some learning and share some education. So again, don't be embarrassed. Don't be worried about asking those questions. Make sure you take something tangible away from this today. So before we jump into it, I'm going to give you a quick overview of what EDI actually means. So that could be equity, diversity, or inclusion, or equality, diversity, inclusion. Sometimes it's those two phrases are interchangeable. So if you've got a quick pen and paper to hand, or you can just play along in your on your screens at home, we've got the definitions of some of those words. So equality, equity, diversity, inclusion, and the definitions there on the right side of the screen. If you just want to have a quick 10-20 seconds, just try and match them up. Just have a quick look through. So it's not a test. Don't worry, you can't fail, but just try and match them up with each one. I'll give you another 15 seconds. And then we'll go through some of the definitions there. I've got a countdown on the timer too, so I know definitely when it's been 15 seconds. But yeah, just have another couple of seconds there. Just have a quick read of everything that's in there, and then we'll go through, starting with equality. So equality, out of those 4 definitions on the right side, is ensuring that every individual has an equal opportunity to make the most of their lives and talents. So equality is kind about giving people the tools to almost level the playing field. Okay, it's about making sure that everybody has equal opportunity. So if someone wants to go climbing, but they can't afford the rope, well, can the wall provide the rope? It's okay if someone can afford the rope because they can still go climbing, but can the wall provide the rope so that everybody has equal opportunity to then take part in climbing? Equity, the second one under there, this is about giving more to those who specifically need it. So this is more around leveling the playing field so the person doesn't need to have extra things to get the equality. So there's a really good graphic on all of this stuff, but equity and equality sometimes are the same thing, but they're not always. They're not always. There's a really good graphic on 3 people are trying to see over a fence and they've got a box that they can stand on. Equality would be giving each person 1 box, but the issue is each person is a different height. So the person on the right-hand side actually needs 2 boxes to see over the fence, where the person on the left doesn't need any, and the person in the middle needs 1 box. Equity then is the taller person giving his box to the shorter person so they can have extra, so everybody has an equal view over the fence. That's equity. Again, you can have a quick Google. There's tons of stuff on the difference between equality and equity. Third on that list, diversity. So this is all around recognizing, respecting, celebrating individual differences. Diversity isn't necessarily saying, okay, well, we're all the same, therefore, all of our experiences are the same. That's not what diversity is. Diversity is recognizing that actually we're all different. We're all individuals. We all have nuances and little diverse things about us that make us different. And it's about respecting those differences and in some occasions celebrating them. And last but not least, inclusion. We've got creating environments where everyone feels welcome and valued. So inclusion is kind of getting people through the door, getting people around the table. Diversity then is making sure their voices are heard within that space. Both of those things lead to greater equality. And through greater equality, we can pretty much come around to processes and systems of equity. So you can see how everything's linked there in an EDI space. So hopefully that makes sense. If not, again, these slides will be going out afterwards, so you can have those little cheat sheets there. That's a quick overview of what EDI is. We'll move on to 9 protected characteristics. Now, these characteristics are listed in the 2010 Equality Act. So that's all around employers, employees, and quite a substantial legal framework that kind of covers protected characteristics. So again, 10 seconds, 15 seconds, 20 seconds if you need it. Can you name as many of the 9 protected characteristics that you know? Again, don't worry if you get it wrong. Quick pen and paper or make a mental note. Just get writing those down. Just think if you can name 9 protected characteristics. Give you another 10 seconds there, and then I'll reveal them and we'll run through a couple of them. Last few seconds, see if anyone can get all 9. If you do get all 9, by the way, I'll give you a prize. Make sure you email me. My email's at the end of this slide. If you get all 9, I'll be pretty impressed. We can sort something out on a little EDI points table, something like that for the next webinar. Maybe we can carry them over. So 9 protected characteristics. There they are. We've got marriage, civil partnership. We've got sex, sexual orientation, religion, belief, race or ethnicity, age, gender reassignment, pregnancy, maternity, and disability. Those are the 9 protected characteristics currently covered by the 2010 Equality Act. Now, the main thing that we're probably going to talk about later today kind of comes under this disability area. So there's a few different bits that we can mention this. So this disability area over here, there are more characteristics that can be a barrier to participation, but mainly today we're going to talk about kind of within this disability area. So neurodiversity, it's quite nuanced in its way that some people with neurodivergences don't class themselves as disabled, some do. Some people that are by definition have a disability would consider themselves neurodiverse or not neurodiverse. It's actually quite nuanced and very personal to the individual. And that's why the clear communication, it can only be a positive thing when we talk about neurodiversity. So breaking that down a little bit further, what is neurodiversity? I'll just turn my laser pointer off. Neurodiversity, it originated in the late 90s from a sociologist called Judy Singer. So it's actually not a medical term. It was something that came from a sociologist framework into a proposed research around this sociologist's own instances of working with patients and himself on the autistic spectrum. So Singer proposed that variations from neurotypical didn't automatically mean a disability, but rather a difference. So that's what I was talking about before, that some people with neurodiversities don't necessarily class themselves as disabled, and some do, which is why that kind of personal nuance thing is really important throughout neurodiversities. There aren't any necessarily medical criteria or definitions what it means to be neurodivergent. Again, it's up to the individual, how they kind of function and how they adapt within wider society, and more importantly, how we as a wider society can make adaptations to make people feel more inclusive if they do have neurodiversities. There's not all forms of neurodivergence are visible. So this is non-visible to outsiders. Some neurodiverse people actually go undiagnosed or undetected for years, and some even go for life. It's quite common to actually realize you've got some neurodiversities later in life. That's quite a common thing. A quick list of some of those conditions that are common among people who describe themselves as neurodiverse include autism spectrum disorder, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, so that's ADHD, dyslexia, Tourette syndrome, social anxiety. These are all things that could be classed as neurodiversities, and not all of those things, like I said, can be defined as a disability. That list isn't exhaustive. In fact, there's some people with those conditions that, again, might not even consider themselves neurodiverse. It's more reason then to make that personal connection and understand that person as an individual. A quick note too for the term non-visible, just at the bottom there. Make sure we're trying to use the correct term. This non-visible is now kind of the best taken, the most accepted term. You get things like invisible disabilities and things which The word invisible tends to erase the legitimacy of it. It's invisible, it's not real. You've got things like less visible, which excludes some people if they are completely non-visible. And you have words like hidden, which could imply that, you know, this person is trying to hide their disability, and that might not be the case at all. So we're just going to go on to a quick list, little cheat sheet of, you know, how to support neurodiverse people. And the first one, you won't be surprised to hear in there, is listen. Be willing to listen to people and practice active listening. If you haven't come across active listening, have a quick Google after this call. There's tons of free resources out there that you can practice active listening and work out the system, the process of active listening. The second one on there is to communicate effectively, again, to build that interpersonal connection. Some people prefer written communication, phone calls, face-to-face. Some people prefer the old visual, audio, reading, kinesthetic kind of learning. It's not really a thing anymore accepted. Too fair to someone say, actually, they only have this type, but it's definitely handy if you have some way of kind of communicating across those different preferences. 3 on this list, avoid value-based labels. So stay away from the high functioning, low functioning to describe conditions. These terms often assume a person's level of function based on how much they behave like someone who's neurotypical. And that's not what we want to do. It's not a comparative kind of, you know, reasoning that, oh, well, this person is less functioning because this neurotypical person can do X, Y, Z. I'm a beginner climber, a bit of a rubbish beginner climber, if I'm honest. You're not going to expect me to do the same climbs as someone who's been climbing for the last 20 years. It's that same kind of thing. Number 4 on this list, no two people are the same. Again, really focus on that communication and that preference of the individual and try and communicate pretty much to the individual's preferences. I'm sure we'll hear some really good stuff from other speakers later in this call about how they achieve that, but it's something to kind of keep at the forefront. And this goes beyond neurodiverse people. This could be new climbers or inexperienced climbers. They're going to require different support than they would to the experienced climber. And last but not least, treat everyone with respect. If we do this, we can almost normalize neurodiversity and provide adaptations within climbing, within sport, within society that honor the dignity of that person who needs those adaptations to thrive and really grow. Again, kind of goes back to that old adage of treat others how you would want to be treated, but you've really got to get that communication and those preferences right. So those are my quick 5 list and a quick run through of EDI. Hopefully that all makes sense. If not, some questions in there, I'd be happy to share that. And last but not least, there is my email address. I think these slides might be shared in PDF at the end of this call, end of this webinar. So by all means, reach out, send us some emails. And if you need any more support, yeah, feel free to drop me an email. So thanks very much, guys. I'll stop sharing and I'll hand back over to Robert. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Alex. That was good. That was loads of really good information, really good background understanding of how we should deal with this and what the terminology is and where it comes from. Thank you very much for that. A couple of good questions coming in. There was one really good one that a few people have already asked. I just want to tick this now. I didn't know if there is a live caption function on Zoom. I didn't know that existed. So unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to have subtitles live during this, but when we come to put this on the YouTube, it will have subtitles. Yeah, if anyone is struggling to keep up with the speakers just now, don't worry, there will be an opportunity later on. Brilliant. I'm going to hand over to Chris, if that's okay. Chris, if you'd like to come back on screen and unmute yourself.
Okay, can you all see this?
Yes, we can.
Okay, cool. 1 second. Okay, so let's get started. So firstly, just wanted to start by saying that my section is going to be related to my perspective on the whole on this issue as an autistic person. It may not be particularly well put together because I haven't had a huge amount of time to do this. I'm in a bit of a rush, and actually this is going to tie into one of my core points that I will eventually arrive at. So in a sense, this is kind of deliberate. One second, I'm just going to hide my self view because I do find images of myself quite distracting. Okay, so firstly, who am I? I've been climbing for more than half my life at this point. I am autistic and potentially have ADHD as well, but I don't really want to focus on that right now. I consider myself disabled as an active term, which means that I'm disabled because society is disabling me. It's a form of, for lack of a better word, systemic oppression. And I would not consider myself disabled if society were more accommodating to my needs. I'm based in Sheffield, and some of you who are based in Sheffield may have seen me around, fairly visible. I identify as non-binary, for lack of a better term, and my preferred pronouns are they, them. And I would appreciate it if those pronouns could be respected. So firstly, what's in it for you? I don't want to hammer this point home for too long because time is limited, but firstly, you'll be doing the right thing. Secondly, there is a growing neurodiversity movement that we're starting to see in popular culture, and this is really a chance to be ahead of the curve and be on the right side of history. There's also, in my opinion, a deep connection between the rock climbing community, or the climbing community in general, and neurodivergence, in particular autism. I believe that there is the occurrence of autistic traits within the climbing community far exceeds that of the general population. And as such, I think the climbing community has a responsibility to not only do the bare minimum to cater to the needs of autistic people, but also to actively be ahead of the curve, as I said. This is actually our community is a really good space to pioneer new ideas, which can then be fed more back into the broader neurodiversity movement. And then finally, by accommodating people with support needs in a neurodivergent sense, we introduce possible curve cut effects, which will benefit the community at large. This term originates from the introduction of actual cuts in sidewalks, especially in the US, to accommodate the needs of people in wheelchairs, which accidentally benefited, for example, people with pushchairs. These are unexpected benefits for the whole community. So before I go on to some concrete suggestions for how we can do better, for example, in climbing walls, I wanted to stress that the take-home message from my part of this seminar is that this webinar is not enough. I know this seems somewhat uncompromising. That's kind of the point. But the neurodiversity is such a huge topic, and it's so varied that I cannot and should not be expected to represent the views of all autistic people or the experiences of all autistic people. Firstly, because this is not my job. I'm a software engineer. This is just completely outside of my profession. And secondly, because the community is so varied that we need to source voices in a statistical manner rather than using the n=1 approach, which I'm kind of adopting now. So firstly, we need an approach that's comprehensive, much more comprehensive than I can offer. And then secondly, we need to offer inclusivity by default. Instead of bolting it on as an afterthought, it needs to be hard-baked into the policies of the mountaineering councils, of climbing wall associations, because otherwise it's just not going to be done properly, in my opinion. And in order to make sure that this inclusivity is realized, we not only need to introduce initial policy, but we also need to ongoing consultancy with related to that policy from neurodivergent people. This means sourcing the views of the most diverse group of neurodivergent people that you could possibly imagine, including people who may be excluded from the conversations around autism. For example, people who aren't white, trans people, just trying to capture anyone who would benefit from being included, should be consulted, and furthermore, should be paid for their time. I'm doing this talk in a voluntary capacity. This is actually during my working hours. and I'm basically skiving off work to do this. This has taken some, not loads, but some of my time to prepare for this. And as I said, much more work needs to be done. So the people doing this work need to be paid for their time and be supported in a professional context. Because if we don't, the closest analogy I could think of would be that if someone, that would be the case of someone requiring access to a disabled toilet at work. And then you say to them, okay, well, you can have this disabled toilet if you stay after work and build it yourself. It just doesn't sit right with me. And that's really the main comment I wanted to make. But yeah, that's the take-home message, but I have more to say. But yeah, more comprehensive policy, which is regularly reviewed by people within the community in a diverse way who are paid for their time. Yeah, everything else after this is a bonus. So this is a kind of plus to what I just said, which is that I can't provide any significant sample size. But the gathering of this feedback should not just be done in one go to generate policy, but climbing walls and other organizations should actively seek feedback from their customers. Because at the moment, if I were to go to my local climbing wall with a concern which may require some discretion, the only option that I have to give that feedback is at a busy desk with lots of sensory information, with lots of people I don't know, and I may be discussing something sensitive. So what I advocate for is better means of providing feedback to climbing walls through a form, through, I don't know, some kind of tablet, which you can just write stuff into, or through something smarter, which I haven't even thought of. And in order to make sure that the voices of marginalized minorities are not washed out by the general feedback, there should be a priority checkbox for marginalized groups, which is an honesty-based opt-in where people can say, I feel like I have needs which aren't represented by those of the majority, and as such, I will join this priority queue. I also consider this a curve cut effect because, as we know, climbing is painfully non-diverse. So this opt-in would also allow the voices of other people to be heard. Again, I think this is a concrete thing which I can advocate for and would not be difficult to implement. It just needs to be done. And now finally, some suggestions for the climbing wall in particular. These suggestions would be far more elaborate if I or someone else had been provided with the resources to do more than just me asking my friends. But here we are. So from a sensory perspective, my background is I'm very sensitive to sound. Some people, and I experience intense and unpredicted stimulus and unexpected stimulus, more or less as physical pain. So this is a kind of core issue for many autistic people. Some suggestions I can give are just turn the music down at climbing walls just a little bit. I really feel like a lot of staff in climbing walls like to play DJ. As a DJ myself, that's fun, but I really think that they're kind of doing it for them more than the people at the climbing wall. I think if they want to do that, there should be an allocated kind of party time down the wall, perhaps a Friday evening where the music goes up a bit. Maybe someone even comes in, like has a mix. But this should not be all the time. Climbing walls should be for their customers. And as part of that, I think it would be helpful to have quiet areas at the wall, just a patch where no music is playing, and rotate that regularly. So the people who want quiet can access all the different bits of wall, not necessarily at the same time, but at some point. And I think that training area, and as someone who spends a lot of time in training areas, I think they should be quiet by default. I think this is partly because a lot of the people I know who train really hard would, for one reason or another, benefit from a quiet area, either because they bring their own headphones, or because climbing is, for example, an autistic special interest for them. I think another easy thing to get right on the sensory front is unscented hand soap. It's not hard, it's quite easy to buy, but some people are sensitive to intense smells, and including a close friend of mine, and it's just easy, so why would you not do it? Then on the behavioral front, so climbing walls for me can be a space for me to go into my own head for a little while whilst feeling very overstimulated by the general interactions of society. And in general, I think that's quite respected and normalized at climbing walls. But also people can sort of come up to you and just be really chatty, and it can be, and I can come across as rude when I ask for space. And one suggestion that's been made to me by a friend who works in the mental health system has been the option of opt-in badges or stickers or something which are color coded and not in red, not in a traffic light colors, but just something neutral without a hierarchy that says, I don't know, one sticker can say, I'm up for talking about anything, come chat to me. I'm here to socialize. Another could say, I'm here to talk, but only about climbing, either because climbing is a special interest for me, or that's just what I want to talk about today. Or I would rather just do my own thing, and I'm here to focus on the activity rather than the people around me, which is actually a lot of the way that I interact with the climbing wall. And then finally, on the gender front, a lot of autistic people in particular identify as gender non-conforming, including myself. And in order to accommodate autistic people down the wall, we should also be accommodating gender non-conforming people. And I think the most obvious and easy way to do this is a gender neutral policy for toilets. I think really there's no excuse for this in 2023 to go to the climbing wall and only have the options male or female. Sometimes there's not even one visible disabled toilet, it's just male or female. And it would just be so easy to just change the signs to say toilets with urinals and cubicles. And it would just make the life of gender non-conforming people a lot easier, and would make the spaces a lot more accessible. I also, and maybe this is going to be a more polarizing one, but I really believe in the gender neutral tops off policy down the wall. A lot of autistic people I know, including myself, find tight and restrictive clothing uncomfortable. And if we are extending to people without boobs the accommodation that they can take their shirt off, then the same, I think, should be accommodated for people with boobs. And I have the case for a good example. I have some gender non-conforming friends who've had top surgery, which is to say the reduction or removal of their breast tissue for gender affirming reasons. And they have expressed an enormous amount of relief at finally being allowed to take their tops off down the climbing wall. I really think that this kind of hits on the gender inclusivity, but also the sensory inclusivity. And I think this is somewhat pushing a little bit ahead of the curve, but for the reasons that I mentioned earlier, I think this is actually appropriate and the right thing to do, given the high rates of neurodiversity within the climbing community. So I think that's the end of my suggestions for now, but I just wanted to reiterate that my main suggestion is to actually take things far beyond this webinar, review policy, assign budget for it, and yeah, just do a proper job. Like, take this as a starting point, but not the end. And I think that's all I have to say. And I will open the floor to some questions.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Chris. Thank you very much. That was really interesting to hear someone giving their kind of personal insight to all this and what would help. I think a lot of these ideas are things that I've heard kind of banded about, various things, but yeah, really good to hear that these are genuine ideas that would make a big difference to people using our climbing walls, people in our climbing community, people like yourself, people with other that come from other neurodiverse backgrounds as well. Really, really good information. We'll save all the questions till the big question and answer bit at the end. We've had some really good ones coming in. Please, everybody, do not be shy with the question and answer section. That's what it's there for. Ask absolutely everything that comes to your head. Super helpful. Thank you very much, Chris. We are going to hand over to Alex Hithersay for our final speaker. That was really good and brilliant. Chris, if you could hide your video and mute yourself, that would be super helpful.
No problem.
We can hand over to Alex.
Cool. Hello, everyone. Before I introduce myself, I would like to thank Alex West for going through all the different terminology involved in the neurodivergent community. I thought that was very helpful, and it's going to help you guys understand what I'm going to talk about in my bit. I'd also like to thank Chris for their unique perspective and insight into the climbing world. So who am I? I'm Alex Hithersay. I'm a climbing coach and a service coordinator for the Charity Act. I've been coaching climbing since 2014, so about 9 years. And over this time, I've worked with an array of different people, from really young kids on the autism spectrum to adults like pushing their grades or trying to climb their first 8A, or people trying to get a new structure into their climbing life. And during my work with ACT, as Chris has said before me, there's a massive link between climbing and autism. And for me to get into my coaching journey, it was through starting up a group similar to what I'm running now. Yeah, sorry, I don't have a PowerPoint. I'm just talking through the notes I've written out. I hope that's okay for someone. I'll try and talk slowly so everyone can understand. So yeah, I got into coaching through winning a bid with Decathlon to take a group of people who accessed a youth club I was working at a time climbing. And through this, I saw how climbing was a great grassroots sort of sport for people who are neurodiverse, as it's a bit more individual based and it's not like a team sport. So there's lots of regressions you can do in climbing that can make it more inclusive to the people who might not have been able to access sport or exercise before. So I'll talk a little bit about how we set up the Send It Club. So 10 years after this, so it's 10 years ago when I was first working in that sector, I was talking to the managers at the climbing work, Sarah and Ruth, and because I was noticing quite a lot of our regular kids clubs and Spider Monkeys, and even on our more advanced group, like our advanced development squad, we had a few people who was presenting, or we've been told, are on the autistic spectrum. So from there, we organised some behavioural management training with a charity called Climbing for All. And from there, I set up the Send It Club. And the Send It Club is an inclusive club for 6 to about 14-year-olds at the moment who are somewhere or present on the neurodiverse spectrum. And how we set this up is, before anyone comes and joins our sessions, they get access to a sessions pack that we made. So that tells them all about the coaches on their sessions. So there'll be a picture of me, it'll tell them my interests. And then we've included our sensory language. I'll talk about if I don't like too bright lights or noise, just so then when we ask for that information from the people joining our club, they feel a bit more comfortable sharing it, because the people who are coaching them have also shared that information. So we can use that to help build into our sessions going forward. So before they join, they receive these packs, and we receive the packs about these kids. So there's already a rapport being built. And with this, they get to share all about their interests. So what we like to do is get to know about the kids' separate interests to climbing. So some of them might be very passionate about like Minecraft or Lego or different books they might be really interested in. And we use these interests as a tool to build a trusting relationship. So we're not just talking about climbing all the time. We can talk about their interests, and then that gives them practice to converse with other people. And then once they're trusted, when it comes to getting them to do climbing or try something they've not done before, because there's a rapport built there, they're more likely to getting involved. And one of the most important bits we do with this is we talk about the sensory language, because as you'd be aware, climbing can be quite tactile. Like you have to grab holds, there's chalk, there's bright lights and stuff. So we try to take into account as much of this as possible. So some of the kids we come will absolutely hate chalk, so we don't even offer them to use chalk. We don't even have to ask them because we have that information. So we try to cut out any sort of embarrassment, if that makes sense, so we can give them the best experience from the get-go. So when they arrive on our sessions, we do an hour and 15 minutes, and that 15 minutes is more of like a chill out time. So when they come, they don't straight away have to get their climbing shoes on and warm up. They've got 15 minutes to chill out, decompress. We don't know what's happened during their day at school or anything that might have happened in their day that might impinge on their experience at the climbing. So we found that 15 minutes decompression time was really good. And it also gives us time to talk to them, get to know how they're feeling that day, what they might want to try at climbing that day. And that also allows for late arrivals, because one of the main things we've tried to do on our session is have it as soon as the mini works is open. So that's at the quietest time, and we can have the music quiet, and then there's that space before all the other like public starts to access the buildings. So one of the main things we do in our sessions is have like a interchangeable structure. So we have like a baseline structure that can change if needed, and we can use this with the considerations we're taking. So normally we do like a bit of a fun warm up, exploring like movement and coordination. And then this is great for when we get new kids, when they're doing their warm up, we can see how they'll approach the wall and how that will be. And one of the first things we do after the warm up, we do a lot of what I call rainbow climbing. So we don't give them any expectations that they have to follow a certain color or use only one kind of holds. We let them use what they want, and the main aim sometimes is just getting to a hold to the top of the wall. So we try and change stuff like that to give them a very open experience with the wall. And like during the sessions from here, we can build on to what we do. So we try to change the aim a lot. So a lot of times when we're working with the kids, we try to change the rules. So there's a lot of rules in climbing that don't always need to be there. Like if a hold says start here, we give them the option to start higher up if they need to, or start lower. If they need to do a jump start, we allow them to a jump start. So we try to, all those rules that can make climbing inaccessible, we try and alter and just give them another way to get in. I hope that makes sense. And then once they've got through that, we can kind of then tailor individual experiences. So we're quite lucky on the Send It Club where we work at very good ratios. So we have 3 or at most 4 coaches on for our group, but then we've also have access to volunteers. So I did a call out when in our early stages of setting up to get volunteers who might want to help on our sessions, and this means we're able to give the kids in our sessions more attention. So we might find like we've got a couple kids who come who love climbing and they do a bit more parallel climbing. They find it hard to engage with other people on sessions, but they might really like the attention you get from a one-to-one setting, and you can help develop their climbing like that. And having more people on the sessions really helps. And then we give them the opportunity. So at the moment, we've just started introducing some structure as like a bridging course, because some of them have been getting on so well with the Send It club that they might be able to bridge onto our normal climbing club after. So we've been splitting the session in half, where we have half structure where they're learning through their climbing skills, their techniques, and building on from the start of their climbing and starting to like follow the grades, follow the colours, learning about their rock overs, drop knees, toe hooks, etc. And because half of them can be doing that, we also then, the other kids on it, we have enough coaches to give them like that one-to-one experience, or to play games with them and stuff, and it helps to build like a more inviting community. Some of the considerations we take into place is like, normally for that session we don't have music on for the first bit because it can be quite distracting, and then with some of them they really like a quite heavy touch. So a couple of the kids we come on, they really like the sensation of being like pushed up the wall, so we give them the chance to do that, and we don't like, we try and clear away of saying we've ever done anything wrong, etc. We just try and like make sure everything's a bit different. So if somebody wants a push to get to the next hold, it's not cheating, it's just a different way to access that climb. So Send It Club's been quite successful recently. We're currently fully booked, and we're looking into starting our second club after the April half term. We'll be starting a second club aimed at slightly older people. We also have to do a lot of behavior management. So a lot of the times with the kids, we have to develop good techniques to keep them focused during the sessions, but allow them space to have a chill out spot. So we're quite good in the mini works where we have a spot that's we just have for our Send It community, which is just a sofa near the cafe. So if any of our kids need to chill out, or if they're finding as having too much demands placed on them, they've got a space where they can go to and they can sit there, get a drink and calm down, and they don't need to tell anyone to do this because now it's in place. They just take themselves there. And that's been working quite well, because then after like 5 minutes break, they can then re-enter the session and carry on. I think I've spoken about everything I can about the Send It Club at the moment, and some of the general considerations I think that we can do from this club for other walls is some of the stuff Chris was talking about, like having times where music is played louder or quieter or not at all in certain areas is quite good. Having like dedicated quiet spaces, so if somebody just needs to sit away from everything else that's going on, that they have that. A lot of it's about making reasonable adjustments so everyone can have their own experience with climbing, and make sure it's their own personal experience and it doesn't have to copy or mimic anyone else's experience. So I hope that all makes sense, and I'll pass you back over to Robert now, and if we have any questions or anything.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Alex. I was frantically copying all of the millions of questions that are coming in the question. This is really good. Really good. Thank you very much, Alex. That was really good information there. Really nice to see what you've been done and what your plans are. Brilliant. Thank you to everybody who's been pinging questions into the question and answer section. There was a big flurry of questions come in there. I've been trying to keep track of them all. There's quite a lot of questions, so we might not get through absolutely everything, but we will do our absolute best. There were some really good questions that came in there, so what we'll do is we'll crack on with some questions and answers. Let's start. Can I get all of our panelists back on screen for the question and answer section, please? And for the question and answer section, like I said, we are being joined by Juan, a parent of neurodiverse twins and ADHD himself. And we might be joined by Abby and Kath as well. Brilliant, everybody's back. Chris, are you going to join us? Maybe, potentially. Alex West, unfortunately, he is a very, very busy man and he's had to leave. And there was definitely some questions there that might be a bit more specific to Alex. But what I will do is I will catch up with Alex after this and get some answers to those questions. So nothing is going to get missed here. There was a question of if Alex is working with GB Climbing to help make their team sessions or squad sessions more inclusive. I don't know the answer to that question. Alex will, so what I'll do is I'll get in contact with him afterwards and get that answered. Yes, there was again a couple of questions around subtitles. I don't know if live subtitles is a thing on Zoom. Maybe someone could educate me here, but I will be putting subtitles on the YouTube video that will go out after this. So if any of this was too quick or anybody who's missed it that needs subtitles, there will be an opportunity for you in the coming weeks. Juan put a couple of really good links, some really good information in the chat function. What we'll do is we'll send that out with the YouTube link as well. There's some really good information in some of the stuff he's put in the chat, which is really good to see. And a question for Alex. There was a couple of people, I think, didn't quite catch what your packs were.
Okay.
Would you be able to quickly explain them again for me?
Yeah, so before anybody joins our Send It Club, we send out like a welcome pack. So that goes through the coaches they're going to be on that session. With that, there's a photo. So there'll be a photo of myself, a list of my interests, how my favorite like climbing place, my interests outside of climbing, and then my personal Sentry language. Because one of the things the kids do before joining on, they do a little about me profile. So I felt like if we were expecting the kids to sit down with their parents and do an about me profile, we should have the same for the coaches on session, because then it's a bit more like equal, a bit similar to like what Alex was talking about. Like, I don't expect any of the kids who come to my session to do something that I'm not going to do myself. Within those welcome packs as well, it has an outline of how the sessions run. So before the kids get there, they know how long their warm-up's going to be. They know how long they're going to be doing their main climbing stuff. They know how long the game's going to be at the end. We've also included a nice map. So before they even get there, they've got a map of the car park where the mini works is, where the big works is, then a map of the centre. So they already know where the toilets are, where the mini boulder is, where the desk is, etc. Sorry, I didn't explain that as well as I could have done during my talk, but I hope that clears things up for you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. I hope that answers the questions that were coming in there. Cool. Well, I'll run through some of the questions that have been coming in. There was one that just came in there just now, which I think for a lot of instructors and to be honest, just general public, this might be a question that people they want to be supportive of, but they just don't quite know how to go about it. So without putting someone on the spot, how can we ask how someone wants to be identified, or if there's anything specific to be aware of, any additional support needs that they might need? Do you guys have any suggestions on how we can ask someone without properly putting them on the spot? Chris,
I think you just said it yourself, Robert.
Sorry, what?
You probably just said it yourself. Is there anything in particular that we can do to make your experience a little bit better? Or is there any additional support that you might need in order to engage better in the activity? Or just quite frankly, just ask directly, is there anything that you would like us to do better?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I really appreciate when I'm asked. And again, like, I'm not everyone, but yeah, I think that this is a somewhat generational shift. I think that perhaps older people, the idea was these things are taboo and they should not be asked. Whilst with like younger people, I think the convention is asking makes people feel seen, and it's considered a really positive thing.
Yeah, Absolutely. For the people that I've worked with that are in various areas of the additional support needs spectrum or the neurodiversity spectrum, or they've always appreciated just an honest question. Don't feel free about it. You know, they've always appreciated me just being upfront and asking the question, is there anything I can do to support you? Is there anything I can do to make this a better experience for you? Likewise, if it's an identity thing, people appreciate being asked what they want to identify it as. So yeah, I think, like Chris said, it's maybe a bit of a generation thing. Like, these questions are not taboo. They're not to be shied away from. They're helpful questions that I think people who want to be identified in a certain way or have additional support needs in any way, they appreciate being offered the chance to say.
Very similar to what Juan and Chris shared, and I've also seen Anita, because some of the kids we work with are quite young, so the best people who know their kids are their parents. So we do a lot of information sourcing through that, not only with our Send It Club or any like one-to-one client I have of a younger age, or any kid before they join like a normal club session. We try and build a good rapport with their parents, so they can share with us anything they feel like needs to be known about their kids. And we're quite lucky at the Climbing Works at the moment, where even though we've got the Century Club, we do have neurodivergent people already on our regular clubs, and even in our development squad we have a couple of people who identify like that, and having that good relationship with their parents really helps. And once we've built up rapport and talking to them, like us, like sharing our interests and stuff, you find if the kids do need to talk to you about something, they'll feel more comfortable about it because they feel like they know you a bit more on a personal level.
Yeah. Maddie, that's a great little line. Ask openly and listen actively. I couldn't put it better myself. Really good. Possible follow-on question then. Someone was asking, how do we advertise our sessions that are fully inclusive without it sounding like a last-minute add-on? I think a lot of maybe climbing walls or instructors out there have worried about potentially offending people by making it sound like they're only doing these things as a little add-on in addition to their normal sessions, whereas absolutely by design, everything that we do is completely inclusive. So how can we go about advertising? Is there any cues or statements or marketing ideas that we can use to advertise our sessions as being fully inclusive without it sounding like an add-on?
You're probably taking a little bit and summarizing what Alex is already doing, and maybe other people are doing as well, with regards to information packs or pre-session sort of briefing. It could also be more explaining in a more consistent way what the session will be, what would entail, what the environment might be like, and what to expect, and what needs might be met or might be adjusted. So it's more of a it's not necessarily a very specific point on a marketing campaign. It's more, like you were saying, Robert, more of a holistic type of view of everything is inclusive. Therefore, neurodiverse people as well, minorities, as well as different socioeconomic backgrounds will be able to take part. So again, it's a bit of a starting the conversation and maybe explain. I think the question had to do as well with hill walking and mountaineering or mountain leading. So it's about explaining more about what the session will be like, and that will in some ways provide information to those who need it.
Yeah, absolutely.
From my perspective, regarding whether or not inclusivity feels like an afterthought, in my experience, it would feel like an afterthought if it is an afterthought. And I think if your sessions are inclusive by design, then I think you can just say that, like, all our sessions are inclusive by design. And I think that if these things are being offered as a bolt-on in a way that's not really compatible with the normal running of a climbing centre or coaching session, then that will be evident. And I actually think that the idea is that if it's across the board not an afterthought, then you won't have to you won't have to confront that discomfort of it maybe being an afterthought, of people jumping to that conclusion, because that jump to a conclusion is often based on experience. So I think this is actually just another indicator for inclusivity, or it's another reason why inclusivity by design is a good idea.
And following from what Chris is saying, is perhaps in the normal operation of a climbing wall, there could be certain times, say for example, the times where it would be more sensory managed. So for example, lighting and sounds and number of people allowed to be inside the wall, that could also be advertised for those who might want to have that experience, not necessarily just autistic people or persons on the neurodiverse spectrum. It's more like, as well, there will be maybe some people whose age might be a barrier in terms of accessing a wall when it's really, really busy. So essentially having those opportunities or that offering could potentially bring other new people in as well.
Great. Sorry, if I go quiet for a second, I'm frantically typing questions. Brilliant. Okay, one other big question then. Have the learning disabled communities had a chance to have their own voices heard? I think this is a big topic, and it goes for all communities, not just learning disabled communities, but any of the underrepresented group communities, sorry. And again, so I can't speak for the other bodies here. I can only speak from Mountaineering Scotland's perspective, but we do have communication with various groups and clubs in Scotland working across the full ASN or neurodiverse backgrounds communities, and we do hear, what support they need, what we can do, how we can improve things, and we feed all that back to our Scottish Climbing Wall network, and we try and improve it on an industry platform. But we know that this isn't everybody. We know that within those groups that we're working with, we're not catching absolutely everybody, and we know that might not be totally representative of the entire neurodiverse community's voice. So please, we are more than up for being accommodating and supporting people. So if you have comments, ideas, suggestions, or you want support in any way, please get in contact with us. And I'm sure that goes the same for the ABC, the BMC, NICAS, Mountaineering Training, Mountaineering Ireland. Please get in contact with us. We're here to support you. And if you are within those communities and you have suggestions on better ways that we can get those voices out there, please let us know. Juan, you had
currently NICAS, sorry, Robert, to interrupt. Currently, NICAS is actually working on inclusion in at this level, a level of neurodiversity, and is listening to coaches, listening to the community, and trying to inform a plan in order to make NICAS a lot more accessible as well. So this is a work in progress for NICAS, and is hopefully something that will try to listen to as many people as possible before putting a product out that potentially will benefit an awful lot of young climbers.
Abby?
Yeah, but exactly what Juan said, and also in terms of working with likes of the ABC, BMC, Mountain Training and others, we are having a lot more regular meetings and working out what is happening, what data is out there, what is missing. And this is a massive focus for all of our organisations. So there's a lot more to do. And I would agree with you, Robert. Anybody who feels they're not being heard, we'd love to hear from you. And that is a great focus for NICAS at the moment. So yeah, this is the start of lots of conversations, this webinar. It's not the end of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. One thing to add from us, so obviously as the ABC, we're sort of slightly more one step removed from the climber, but we work with climbing walls and try and support climbing walls in making their facilities more accessible. So we have a sort of guidance document called Everyone's Welcome in Climbing that if anyone hasn't got, we can certainly share after this, but always looking to improve and expand that advice, and bringing in people that really know how to do this, and making sure people with lived experience can contribute is always part of our approach. And in positive terms, in terms of paying people for this work, but we are going to be hiring someone to work in the area of EDI within the ABC as well. So we will have sort of paid resource working in this area very soon. So I think that's positive.
Brilliant. Anything else to add there, everybody? Right, next question then. Brilliant. Is there a plan? This kind of goes to the big bodies here. Is there a plan to work with community groups from obviously neurodiverse backgrounds, but probably all backgrounds that are currently operating within climbing? Again, I'm going to quickly start this off and say, like, I can't speak for the other bodies, but within Mountaineering Scotland, absolutely, yes. In Scotland, we already work with groups like Urban Uprising, Common Wheel, Edge Adventure, Able to Adventure, and we work with community groups across all backgrounds to try and increase access for anybody from a neurodiverse background, an ASM background, whatever background you're coming from. If you need support, we try and work with groups that are offering that support and get more people and more diverse people climbing. Again, it goes back to the same point as before. If you are in a group that isn't getting support currently and would like support in some way, or wants to ask questions, or wants to link in with one of the other groups that's currently in climbing, you want to try climbing for the first time, whatever, please get in contact with us. That's what we as a governing body are there to do, is to support you getting into climbing in whatever way that needs to be. So if you want some support, please get in contact. How about from the ABC side, Kath?
Yeah, I think that's, it's something we're really passionate about. It's a really important part of our mission. Diversity is one of our key pillars, which is why we are bringing a paid person in to do this. So, just having the resource and people to have the conversations, do the work is sort of an important first step. And I know that sounds a little bit, late almost, but I think it's, something we've been working towards. We're a really small team, so having a dedicated resource for EDI is quite it's quite a powerful thing. So yeah, we are, and we will be more.
Again, I think we're on the start of a journey, and definitely will be. We're developing early stages of developing a additional piece of work within NICAS that Juan mentioned, and as part of that, a big part will need to be ensuring we're talking to the people who would be involved in it and benefiting from it, rather than saying this is, within NICAS, this is what we've done. We need to be talking to people. So it's still early stages. I can't say we're doing this right now, but is there a plan? Yes. The plan is developing. And again, the more people we can speak to, the better.
Yeah. Help us develop this.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's a quick question that's come in there about where can we contact people? I know there's been a couple of comments about that. I've seen Kath put her contact email in there. I've just put in the Climb Scotland's email contact there. We can send, when I send out the link for these webinars, for the videos and Juan's information, I can put contact emails in that email. That'll go to all of our attendees here. But if you want to get in contact with us before then, you don't have an email, there's some in the chat. Likewise, get in touch with us through any of our social media platforms or our websites. We'll all have contact details and stuff. Juan, you got your hand up.
Sorry, just following on that, there was a question as well, which perhaps Mountain Training also could be looking into. The question was around access for adults to become coaches, adults with a non-neurodiversity, perhaps how to map the pathway, perhaps to qualifications. And that is, I think, a very critical point as well, if I may, although I know that mountain training is probably not at the moment being able to respond, but working myself as a coach and learning about my ADHD very late in life and how to manage it in a day-to-day basis. I can say that I probably struggled a bit more than perhaps I would have liked to, now that what I know more about the condition as well as how to manage it. So perhaps that is something else that could be included in the discussion, in the wider discussion, is that could neurodiverse people have a pathway in the industry as route setters, as general managers, as coaches, as team members, considering the positive aspects of it, and as well as some of the risks that are associated with a neurodiverse condition, without necessarily raising a particular flag in here or to put things into a negative perspective. Unfortunately, people with ADHD will have a much higher risk of ending up either in prison or a risk of suicide, or simply disengaging and not being able to continue a pathway that started. So there is some support needed, and there's some support that could benefit a large number of people that in turn will be potentially very creative, very attentive to detail, very caring, and actually really good at crisis and risk management once they are being trained and learning how to manage themselves and cope themselves with a condition such as ADHD, for example.
Brilliant. Grant, this is one probably for Chris, actually. So you mentioned in at the start of your talk that you think there's potentially more autistic people within the climbing community, or more neurodiverse people within the climbing community than there may be as a percentage of population in the wider population. Why do you think that is?
So the first thing I'd actually like to do is at some point in the chat, I'll link to an article that I wrote for UKC on this exact topic. I think that there are a couple of, so basically there are two sides to this. There's climbing's appeal as an autistic special interest. What a special interest means is an intense topic of interest for people to like focus on really hard. So I have a couple of special interests, but yeah, climbing's a big one. I think the fact that climbing is like an endless rabbit hole really sets it up to be that. There's like the collecting aspect of like guidebooks and gear. There's like the preparation aspect of trying to work through topos and figure out what you're going to do. There's the routine aspect of training, and then there's also the problem-solving nature of the sport itself. And then on top of that, there is a series of features that climbing offers, just accidentally, which make it quite friendly to autistic brains, which is that, firstly, in the act of going climbing, you spend a lot, when you talk to people, you're not looking at the person, you're looking at, say, climbing holds, which like really reduces the need for like body language and eye contact. There's also when you're climbing with someone on the other end of the rope, etc., you don't have to talk to them all day, which is just like a big relief, or it can be. What other ones? Oh yeah, so climbing provides a constant backdrop of routine, allowing for more adventurous travel than a lot of autistic people would otherwise be able to experience. So as of many climbers, I consider myself to have done some like pretty mad traveling, and that has only been facilitated through having this constant sort of point to circle back to of a special interest. It's been climbing, and it's also been being a DJ. That's also been like an avenue to like lots of adventurous travel. But yeah, so it's sort of, it takes a place as a special interest and also as an outsider sport and an individual sport, which will attract autistic people. It sort of takes its natural place as a special interest, but then by accident has features which appeal to autistic people.
Yeah.
And from the point of view of ADHD, I think it's a very active physical activity that involves problem solving and could be long or short, depending on if you're bouldering on routes and depending on your level of attention. It is something that is an immediate reward you get to the top or not, you get that little dopamine shot, and that is what we're seeking all day, every day, the whole time. It's a way as well to get engaged in something that is very much an individual thing, but you can also share it with other people being around, and that seems to be okay as well to manage some of the behavior that can be challenging. For some people with ADHD, actually find that climbing is a way to settle. It definitely was in my case, and it's definitely the case of my children. So settle the mind, settle the expectation as well sometimes of having to perform or not, is simply being able to engage and be active is actually a really good coping mechanism.
This isn't really a question, it was just a comment that came in there. At our climbing wall, our most experienced CWDI, who is also our training coordinator, is openly neurodiverse. And I think that's quite an important one. It's the, if you can see it, you can be it. Like, how can we make our community as diverse as possible and as inclusive as possible? It's having people in the industry, working in the industry that are diverse. It's making sure that we do have a diverse community within the industry, not just the community. So there was a question that came in before: how can neurodiverse adults get into coaching? This is maybe a specific question for mountain training, which again, I will, because we haven't got anyone specifically from mountain training here, I can go and get an answer for and see exactly how they are tackling this. But as far as I'm aware, the coaching qualifications across the board, all of the qualifications, they are fully inclusive, and reasonable adjustments can be made for anybody that's going on to any of the courses. So yes, neurodiverse adults can get into coaching. There are qualifications out there through mountain training. You might not even need a qualification to start coaching your friends or your community group, whatever it is. It might just be some upskilling yourselves, but there are qualifications out there for you to get into it, if that's a route you want to go down.
I think on my personal journey of gaining all my qualifications as a coach and being part of the piloting team for Performance Coach Award, I found that it was down to my own personal interest and an obsession really with everything that had to do with climbing and learning about the physical development and so on and so forth. But having been the mentor of at least 2 or 3 high-level coaches at this point in England, I think that finding somebody that you can relate to, a peer that you can probably grow with alongside and develop your own skills and share information, and somebody who can effectively be your accountability partner as well, essentially is keeping an eye on are you progressing, are you doing everything that you need to do in your personal experience before you access, say, your assessment. That could be quite helpful. It's more an individual drive, and that in really, if you put your heart and soul into it, at least from my own personal experience, it's an incredible way to manage some of those more impairing symptoms of our conditions.
Alex, is there anybody that you've worked with through any of your work to date that has gone through any qualifications or would like to go through any qualifications, or maybe get to the stage of being an instructor or a coach at some point?
Well, I self-recognise as attention deficit hyperactive disorder as well as one, and I've gone through CWI, CWDI, development coach training, quite a lot of the mountain training things. I found on the day they've always been accessible and things. The hardest part I found personally with it was having to log everything you do. One of the things I find hard, I'm probably one of the only climbers I have who doesn't log anything on UKC. I've never logged anything on UKC. For some reason for me, I don't like that side of climbing. I like just climbing whatever I want to climb. I don't need to have a diary of it. So when I was doing my CWDI, to go through over 10 years of history, and then I had to, I was very lucky that who did my course was Dan Middleton, and he allowed me to phone him up, and he went through everything with me as I did my D-log, which he picked, like, used his own time. He wasn't getting paid for that time. He just went through it with me to make sure my D-log was up to date. It was all fine, and he would like pass my CWDI. So when I've had colleagues, like I used to work with an autistic coach as well, when they went through their CWI and wanted to progress further, because I had a really good experience with Dan Middleton, I passed his details on to him. So I think making sure that the right people leading the courses is key, because at the end of the day, they're the ones who are going to make it accessible, and they're the ones who are going to make sure the right people pass the courses. If that does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
No, I've heard of that that kind of thing happening before. Again, where someone's either put an audio recording just stating what they've done, what their experience is, or having a phone call for their D-log tick. And it's, you know, it's about those reasonable adjustments. I think most of the providers of these courses are more than happy to make those adjustments for people that need it. It's just about having those conversations. Kath?
So yeah, I've just got a sort of personal update actually, that unrelated to this seminar. My son's actually just been diagnosed with ADHD in the last 2 weeks, so even while we were planning this, but he does parkour, and his parkour instructor is openly ADHD and talks about it. And in fact, most of the kids are, and they were talking about being a sort of superpower ADHD group. But for my son, sort of just, you know, finding out that diagnosis is really exciting for him to be part of a group where a lot of people share his you know, experiences, and he's got this brilliant role model in the coach, and it's really exciting and inspiring. So I think it is that visit, you know, letting people know where it's appropriate is a really positive thing for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. Grant, there was a question came in, how can we resolve any of the blocks or issues that groups have previously felt when they've come into a climbing wall or gone climbing somewhere? They've come across a barrier, they've come across a block or something that didn't quite mesh. How can we resolve these issues and try and get them back in?
Communities establish themselves. A community as a group have a lot more power in a communal voice, that they can actually talk about their experience as a whole rather than individual by individual. So I know sometimes for a lot of neurodiverse people might find it really difficult to actually find a group or actually be willing to be actively part of a group. But I think that when it comes to access and inclusion, we are seeing within the climbing community a lot of these groups happening, whether it's people who identify by a specific gender or by the condition or neurodiverse the diagnosis, if you like. There's a lot more happening these days in terms of socials at walls, and they can all be tweaked quite relatively easy to be more inclusive to these people, to these groups. And it's all down to the people who belong to these groups to actually be active and to feel that they can belong somewhere. So it's about, in my opinion, communities.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and there you might have come across. I know I've come across this in working in climbing walls, where you've got someone who has joined one of your groups, or a group has come in and maybe something just hasn't quite worked, something hasn't meshed, or there has been a barrier or a block there or something, and you're worried that that person might not come back because of that block. And for me, it was always about just having that open, honest conversation. Like, I see that climbing can be good for you. I would love you to come back. How can I make any adjustments to support you and get you back and make it in a better experience for you? And that might be signposting to communities, like Juan is saying, or specific groups for people, or making adjustments like better access to toilets, or, you know, whatever it might be. It's if you see someone who has had a block or a group that has come across a barrier in some way, having those open, honest conversations. How can we improve this? How can we change things to make this better for you? Grant. This is possibly a question for the big bodies that are putting these together. So there's 3 questions. Will there be a webinar to explain to neurodiverse people how neurotypical people work? Or will there be sessions aimed specifically at climbing wall staff or managers and not just instructors? And will there be webinars focusing on different aspects of neurodiversity? So not just autism, not just it's anything specific. So I mean, my answer to this would be, if any of these topics are what you guys want to hear, let us know. These webinars are put on to support you, to support the industry, to support the community in climbing. And we only want to put things out there that are actually going to be relevant and helpful for you guys. So if you have topics that you would love to hear discussed, if you've got ideas for what you want help with, if you've had any issues that you'd like discussed or some advice on, then please let us know, and we will put on webinars that the community want, the industry needs. So yeah, like Kath has put her contact email in there. I'll send all the contact emails out in the communications after this. But yes, if you've got stuff that you'd love us to talk about, anything specific, anything not so specific, pretty general, doesn't matter, let us know and we'll try and put some stuff on.
Real quick about maybe neurodiverse people trying to understand the neurotypical world, which is something that I come across in my day-to-day job every day, mainly with adults. Consider getting a coach to support you in that aspect. There are ways of getting free coaching in inverted commas, for example, through Access to Work. There's a way of accessing additional support from the government for persons with disabilities in order to stay at work. So if your intention is, for instance, be a team member in a climbing wall, be a route setter, and so on and so forth, you can get more specific coaching for your neurodiversity in order to kind of navigate better a little bit the neurotypical world. I'm not saying that it's a recipe that is going to work all of the times. You will need to kind of source your own coach, find that you actually can create and co-create a relationship with them, and actually maybe somebody with a bit of knowledge on the climbing industry will be very useful. Not very easy to find, but it is one way. It is one way for neurodiverse people to understand the neurotypical world. And I think that there is plenty of, there are plenty of books with some sound science behind it for neurodiverse people, some oftentimes written by neurodiverse people who can also kind of help out with the difficult task of navigating a neurotypical world.
I was just going to support what you said, Robert, which is in our planning meetings. Big thing we said was the first of these webinars should be partly about working out what else people want to hear.
Yeah. And
for us to be able to then plan those, because these are to benefit everybody, and for us to get that feedback and then feed it back in through our organisation. So thank you for all the suggestions coming through.
Yeah, absolutely. There is this one made me smile. There's a question that's just come in. Can these webinars be compulsory for all climbing instructors at walls? I think everybody that is working in the industry should be listening to these webinars. They are brilliant webinars, if I do say so myself, but it's really good information that's just going to, if you're a climbing instructor, it's going to make you a better climbing instructor. And I know that every climbing instructor out there does it because they want to do a good job. They want to support people. They want to help people get into climbing. And this kind of stuff will help you be better. So I think the suggestion that it needs to be compulsory for all instructors, that's down to the climbing wall management to decide that. I support it.
I think, Robert, isn't it compulsory for everyone working in climbing? Because I think one of the questions above as well, I'm being flippant, but one of the questions above was about what about, you know, beyond coaching and instructing. And I think we have heard a number of tips and advice today that apply to the environment generally. So it's from music to, you know, how your reception's arranged and where people are able to ask questions or give feedback. So instructing is one arm of this, but I think really, and the Everyone's Welcome in Climbing document intends to look at the whole climbing wall environment, everything you experience in there, and actually diversity in all its forms. So it doesn't sort of categorize by, you know, different types of diversity. The principle is that everyone's welcome in climbing, and many things that we do to make one person feel welcome should actually make a lot of other people feel welcome as well. So that's the sort of principle we're going for. But as you know, as Abby and everyone else has said, to get there, you know, we need feedback. We'd love to hear people's individual stories and needs. So I think we're all really open to that.
Yeah, absolutely. There was one question in here, and I possibly might be the only one that can answer this because it's competition specific. And as part of Mountaineering Scotland, I help run and organise a lot of the competitions, including a big one last weekend, hence why I look so tired. Is there any work being done to make climbing competitions more accessible? And how can we have more diverse categories in competitions without ending up with low numbers in each category? This is a huge topic, and competitions they're ever evolving. We're always changing them, we're always updating them to try and make them more fun, more accessible, more specific and to what our community needs. And if there's changes that need made, then we need to hear from the community that accesses these competitions to be able to make those changes. We will always try to make our competitions, especially in Scotland, again, I'm sure the BMC are exactly the same on this, but we'll always try to make our competitions as open as possible, as accessible as possible, and we'll try and make reasonable adjustments everywhere we can when someone lets us know of any specific needs that they have. We do things like, you know, taping the holds that people are to use so we're not getting confused, turning down the music, that kind of thing. All these reasonable adjustments we can make when we know that someone with any additional needs is coming. We in Scotland run a Climb Scotland Fun competition, which is open access. The qualifiers are over 6 weeks and you come in at your own time, at your own pace. So you can choose times that are maybe quiet in the climbing wall where the music's down. You can go in at a time where it is easy for you. And beyond that, going bigger, we've got the paraclimbing championships, and in Scotland we've got the paraclimbing festival as well. So we have things out there for everybody, but we understand that not everybody is going to want to enter the paraclimbing championships. Maybe they want to enter the Four Nations championships. And like I said, these are ever evolving things. If there's additional needs that you need and we need to make reasonable adjustments, please get in contact, let us know. We want these to be as open as accessible as possible. Looking at different categories and stuff, yes, please have the conversation with us.
Could I just give a shout out, since there was something in the chat from the UK Paraclimbing Collective. I've been involved with them in different ways, and I know that they are a very strong team of people. Some of them are actually part of the paraclimbing team as well. They could provide some very useful information, like Chris was saying, hopefully paid, because their time is valuable as much as ours, and they can also give a good insight as what it is to form a club, to include people into the club and hear their thoughts about what is needed and what adjustments needs to be made. So that there are groups out there already thinking about this and already starting to get around the barriers that exist already. But there was a question about more specific about high performance individuals in the current arena that potentially are going to be competing in able neurotypical type of setting. And in my experience in the past, is really very much down to the relationship there is between the coach, the parent, the performing athlete, and their perception of the actual performance. So in some ways, neurodiverse people are quite used to mask their traits and to mask their symptoms to a certain degree and to navigate the world that way. The actual letting go of all of that is the actual performance of the climbing, is being able to stand on a podium if that's what they want, or just simply to take part. But that said, it means that perhaps for a neurodiverse athlete is twice the effort just to get to the competition aside from the training. But ultimately, it's very much down to their own motivation and the drive to actually succeed, because it's what they want, it's what they feel motivated to do. Their coach, basically the team around them can support them as an individual, because ultimately this is a one-person type of approach. It's not. It's a person-centered approach. It's not a blanket for all the squads or all participants in a neurotypical competition.
Yeah. Like I said, this is the competitions and accessibility it's a big topic. That's a whole nother webinar in itself, that one. So brilliant. I'm aware that we are kind of running out of time. We've kind of over time, so I'm going to call it there. I know that there's been loads of questions coming in that we haven't managed to get to, but like I said, I will gather them all and get answers to all of them, and this will be sent out to you guys in time. It might be sent out as a Word document with all the questions and answers. It might be able to be little videos that I've managed to catch up with some of our panelists later. This webinar will be up on the Climb Scotland YouTube in time, once I've done a little edit and added some subtitles for everybody. That will be up on the YouTube, and we will send the link out to everybody when we can. There was one comment that just came in there. I'm not an instructor, but I found this extremely useful as a member of a climbing wall team. I think that says it all. This kind of information is useful for the entire industry, absolutely everybody. And it's stuff that we can't shy away from. It's stuff that we need to talk about, we need to discuss, and we need to make changes to make sure it's as accessible and easy for everybody. And like I said, if there's any comments, suggestions, or anything, or more things that you'd like us to discuss, please get in contact with us. That's what we're here for.
And Robert, should we trail really briefly our next seminar?
Go for it, Kath.
Which is not in this area of EDI, but as said, we can talk about all sorts of things in the following seminars. But on the 4th of May, we have a seminar with all of our groups again: BMC, NICAS, Mountain Training, Mountaineering Scotland, Mountaineering Ireland, also as part of this group, although not on the screen today. But next time it'll be led by Mountain Training, talking about their plans for a bouldering qualification, so a bouldering instructing qualification. So it's about getting people's feedback on that. So quite a different topic, and it's probably a different format, but it should be really interesting on the 4th of May at 10 o'clock.
Brilliant, brilliant. Can I get everyone to give a massive thank you to Alex, Juan, Chris, Alex West, who's not here, Abby and Kath for joining us. Brilliant. Thank you very much, everybody. Loads of really good information there. I'm hoping that everybody in the chat managed to get some golden nuggets of information that will help you be better climbers, better instructors, just better beings in the climbing community. Thank you very much, everybody. I will let you all go, and hopefully we'll see all of you in the chat at the next webinar on the 4th of May.